All right, welcome along to the RTÉ Soccer Podcast. Raf Diallo here. You can watch or listen in every week on RTÉ.ie, YouTube, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm joined today by former St. Pat's Drogheda and Shelbourne manager Johnny McDonnell and RTÉ Sports Conor Neville, and it'll be a pair of 2-0 defeats for Ireland in this new era that will be the headline act for us. We'll also talk about the situation at Dundalk and build up to the weekend's FAI Cup quarterfinals and League of Ireland action as well. Now, hope you're both keeping well, and I suppose broad brush first before we go into the intricate detail of the two games against England and Greece. We're in a situation now on this Wednesday morning where we're coming off the back of four competitive defeats, home defeats in a row. Johnny conceded another goal from long distance, and of course the opposition Greece. It's only 11 months ago we lost them by the exact same scoreline in the exact same venue, just in a different competition. Broad brush so far. Your first impressions of the Heimir Hallgrimsson era, those first two games, the good, the bad, and perhaps the ugly as well.
Well, yeah, starting off, bringing him in, he hadn't got much time, obviously, with the England game. I think the English were fantastic on the night, I have to say. Were we organised enough? Probably not. Could we have done much more against England? Probably more, because I looked at Finland last night. They looked a lot more organised than we did in the 2-0 defeat. England could have beat us 5 or 6-0. I think they took the foot off the pedal. Did he know the players? Did he know what system he was going to play? I kind of don't take that on board, Raf. I kind of think, you get in, you're in charge, you're kind of going, this way we're going to play. Whether Johnny McDonnell, whatever, you say this is the system we're going to play, and you're going to have to play it. You can ask John O'Shea and Paddy McCarthy of their ideas on who the players are, but the in-game management for me was disappointing against England. Not to get it organised earlier. It's always saying, well, I don't know the team and I'm going to sit back and have a look at this. When you're on the side of the pitch, you're kind of going whether you're an assistant or whether you're the manager. This is not working. I need to correct this. We've 10v10 on the pitch. I need to change players around. So that's your in-house management. I think there should have been more done with that in relation to, the game against England, because they wiped the floor with us. I mean, they absolutely wiped the floor with us. We were on a different planet. So coming into the next game against Greece, I watched the Greeks on whatever it was, Saturday, and watched them against Finland. I thought they were so well organised, played well. They had a structure, they had a game plan about them. Took loads of notes in relation to the way they played. They played high enough line. They played down the left-hand side through Simicast, which they done against us a fair bit, and we didn't deal with that early on in the game. So, look, it's two games. No goals scored. I think we 2 shots on goals in the two games. Similar stuff. We could have the Malumbi chance against England where it was brought back small bone and we thought done okay in the two games. Pulled the ball back. Malumbi stuck on over the bar under no pressure. Brown done the exact same. It was nearly the exact same move last night. So, yeah, we didn't take our chances when we had them. It was 1-0 against Greece, but I thought the game last night just so even, just looked so even. They were there for the taking, and obviously we were there as well. But he needs to get a grip on it now. I'm not saying it's two games, but he needs to put a stamp on it and say, look, we need to be hard to beat, which I think he tried to do last night. But the players are making individual, not mistakes, but individual decisions, bad decisions on the pitch. I don't think the manager can be responsible totally for that. These players are playing at a high level.
Yeah, we'll get to the decision making on the pitch. There's a couple of screen grabs I think will be interesting for people to see later on in terms of the goals conceded against Greece. Of course, 2-0 defeat. Ioannidis with a long range strike on 50 minutes, and then Solis with the goal at the end of a counter attack with 3 minutes to go of normal time. And before that, of course, Conor, you were at the Aviva last night, and of course for the England game on Saturday as well. And if you're trying to build a nightmare scenario in terms of who were going to be the 2 goal scorers, Alfred Hitchcock probably couldn't have written it any better in terms of the fact it was Declan Rice and Jack Grealish. But the atmosphere in the stadium in the build up to both games, and then just how that shifted in your own view while sitting there.
Yeah, well, I suppose there was a bit of a gung-ho vibe prior to the England game. I think people were probably sort of there was a bit of tribal passion there, which ignited something at the start, and there was obviously the Irish fans were very enthused by the opposition they were playing and leaning on ancient history and so forth. But that, I mean, we got brought down to reality pretty quickly, and I think the energy that was in the crowd really fizzled out before half time, and even then the determination to boo Declan Rice's every touch waned as the game went on, partly because he had so many of them. And, by the end, I think there was an acceptance of where we're at. And I think last night, I mean, I'm hearing there's a lot of talk about the booing in the crowd. I know Matt Doherty was booed when he came on. I didn't actually hear that really. I think I might have been in conversation with someone, and someone pointed out that I think Matt Doherty was booed there, which there's Doherty. I think there's a kind of a sort of languid hangdog vibe he gives off, which incites people, particularly when things aren't going well. And his defending isn't always the most diligent, as we saw at the end last night. I don't know, was the atmosphere poisonous so more than it was it was resigned, I would describe it as. There's a kind of an air of hopelessness, I think, enveloped the stadium last night. And when the second goal went in, there was a kind of stampede for the exits of which I was part, I have to say. But there was that air. And from the snatches of conversations I would have been party to and would have heard, I think the discussion was more about sort of macro issues rather than just the minutiae of what went wrong in the game or what's wrong with the current team. I think there's a growing acceptance that in the short term it's very hard to see it get any better, and people are thinking in big picture terms at the minute. I mean, after eight defeats in 10 competitive games or whatever since the start of last year, that's bound to happen, particularly when the only two exceptions are against Gibraltar. So yeah, it's as bad as it ever been, and there was an air of hopelessness, and people are wondering, will Irish football ever get in a better place, or how it can do that?
Yeah, and perhaps it's healthy that those are the questions actually being asked as well, because of course there are a lot of structural issues within the game here. Let's listen to Heimir Hallgrimsson, because he talks a lot about confidence. You're talking about confidence ebbing away among the supporters in the stadium, in a sense of resignation. That lack of confidence seems to be at play within the Irish squad in terms of their performances, and that's what the new Ireland manager discussed with Tony O'Donoghue post-match.
Like I said before the game, winning is a habit, but unfortunately losing is too. And you can kind of sense it, that there's a lack of confidence in this team. And yeah, we only needed to give them a sniff of a chance, and they were 1-0 up. I think it was kind of the first chance at goal, and they scored from that. And that is kind of what happens to a team without confidence. They concede in this manner.
You will have seen, though, from watching Ireland games in the past, that goal from outside the area has happened time and time again. Yeah, for us, it's within our principles, pressing the player in this space. He was too first of all, he was too open, but we should press him instead of dropping off him and give him a chance to shoot. We will for sure improve in these areas as time goes on. On the other hand, I'm having these two games. I was really pleased half time. We showed structure. We nullified what the Greeks were doing, and we said don't give them a chance to score, because they are that kind of a team. They are like a snake. They will bite you if you give them a chance, and that's what they did. And once a Greek team is winning 1-0, it's difficult to play against them. And then we got a little bit unorganized and maybe rushed it too much and lost it open, conceded the second goal, and then it's pretty difficult to come back. You were very vocal yourself on the sideline this evening. Were you angry at times at what you were seeing? No, I was just trying to remind them of their positions in organisation, etc. And it's difficult, of course, to remotely control them from outside when the people is supporting and cheering, etc. So Heimir, looking at that second goal, and you were right in front of me. Ireland were in possession. Ball went out for a throw into the opposition, and boom, boom, and we were done again. Yeah, exactly. The worst thing about that moment is that we were in a good moment. We already put in two strikers, so we wanted the ball up front, and losing it then in this manner
and then they have, yeah. But we could have stopped it probably 3-4 times before they scored.
It looks like such a big job to rejuvenate Irish football. Do you need longer than 18 months to do this?
No, nobody said it was easy. I know it's going to be tough, but I definitely saw improvement. Maybe not as good opponent as England, but I definitely saw improvements, especially in structure. And when we were in good shape and in good structure, we looked really good, both off the ball but also on the ball. So I think we just need to find this relationship between players. Like we've said before, when you haven't played maybe the system, plus you haven't played a lot with the players around you, this uncertainty comes in your head. You know, should I pass? Should I step? Will my teammate cover me, etc. So we need to find the team, find the players as quickly as we can, and then play them consistently.
Okay, next month will be huge. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
So that is the Ireland manager, Heimir Hallgrimsson, speaking to Tony O'Donoghue after the match. And so he's talking about two types of confidence there. Obviously, the confidence that goes up or down based on results and that kind of psychological side. Then the other, where he's discussing the confidence of your teammates in the sense of knowing where they're going to be, and that only comes through cohesion. So, Johnny, you know, from a coach's perspective, how do you instill that confidence into a team like Ireland who are struggling badly and maybe play with shifting formations and changing systems and maybe a lack of cohesion there?
You know, well, for me, you know, when the international team comes in for their camps, you know, sometimes you go in and you don't have that much time. So you've got to utilise your time to exactly do what you want to do. And sometimes they spend a lot of time, I'm not saying this team, but teams, and they're doing drills and it's all nice and they're trying to get a bit of team spirit together, but you've got so little time that you need to work with your 11v11. You know, if you have 22 players, you need to work systems. He talks about structure at the very end. Structure. So the structure of the team. So you need to be able to say from the first minute that you come in, say, we're on the training pitch, we're out here, we're doing our warm-up and we're going straight into 11v11. This is the way we're going to play. In possession, this is the way we play out in the back, this is the way we play into midfield, this is the way we play up to the front, this is the way we play out to the wide players. It doesn't have to be at a high intensity. You can walk through this. It can be quite boring, but it's clear and concise. And this is where the way you need to spend the time. You don't need to spend time on doing lovely fancy drills and that. The players can do that. So the structure is about your 11v11. When you're in possession, when the transition happens, when you lose possession, when we get the ball in the centre half position, left side or right side, who does he play to? Who's available? When it goes into midfield, where's the next move? When we lose possession, who deals with that? I listened to Nathan Collins last night talking about counter-attacking as part of the game. Counter-attacking, when you're attacking, you've got to be ready for their counter-attack. So you've got to counter their counter-attack. So we got done on the counter-attack last night. Yeah, we're in good possession. But you need to be able to say, we're going to lose this ball. We need to sit somebody in front like a Malumbi. Sit there, don't move, stay with me and O'Shea. We're organised, we'll delay the attack. So I'm just trying to get my point across about, you know, that builds confidence, that builds relations because it's clear. He's talking about lads not knowing when to go in, when to go out, when do they drop off, when should they push up. You do that in the training pitch, Raf. You have to do it. It's not nice. Players don't like doing it because it's boring, but it's so important that you do it. And then you say to them, you know, when it happens on the pitch, they go, well, I've done this in training. It's a rehearsal. You know, you don't go to a show in the Borgash Theatre. They don't just arrive up on the night and put on the performance. They rehearse it. And it's not nice. Fellas are kind of, here we go again. And I know I'm sounding a bit boring or whatever, but that's just the way it has to be. And then everyone knows that's what happens when we lose it there. That's what happens when we win it there. That's what happens when we win it back here and we don't play it blindly up the pitch because the centre forward knows my two defenders are going to win this. I need to be in that position or I need to be in front. Wherever it might be, but it's clear and concise.
Yeah, and 3 changes were made, Conor, from the England game in terms of the starting lineups to the Greece game, and that was Jason Knight and Brown coming in to add more bodies in midfield, which was an area they got swamped against England, both tactically and I suppose in personnel terms. And then Omobamidele, who comes in to play right back. Doherty goes out, Coleman injured, of course, so unavailable, and then Adamida also dropped, and Sammy Smodix playing up front. It seems in the first half, though, there were, whatever about the lack of confidence, but they did actually seem to play a good bit of football in that first half before, and we'll talk about it later, the second half sort of turns into a bit of a disaster.
Yeah, it felt encouraging the first half, certainly. I mean, their pressing games seemed to be more effective. It seemed to be more organised and more of a collective effort, I would have said, really, than it was against England. Now, they're obviously playing an inferior team, and Greece were very ragged in the first half. There was a lot of sort of loose passing under pressure. I think there was at least a few occasions where they passed the ball directly out of play. And some of that, I mean, there was some decent Ireland play. I mean, they didn't create too many chances, but obviously there was the Ogbene moment, which most people in the stadium thought was a goal initially, obviously. And there was a delayed reaction then to the offside flag. But there was other, I mean, I thought one of the best passages was down the right flank involving, I think, it started with Smodix, then Smallbone and Ogbene, and it ended with a really great chance, a horrible skied shot from Alan Brown on the edge of the penalty box, which, he should. That was a great. I mean, it wasn't that much. It was a sort of similar type of chance to the one Greece had in the second, and they converted. I suppose that's the manager was talking about, that hesitancy Ireland have, and he was leaning back when he took the shot. There is a kind of jumpy hesitancy about Ireland when they get into attacking moments, that they can't seize them. I mean, even in the second half, and I know Smallbone got man of the match, and that provoked its own reaction in the crowd, which I think is primarily about Irish players getting man of the match in these circumstances. But there was a couple of times when Smallbone, I think once he got the ball in the box and had ample space and didn't appear to realise, and sort of turned back out again. And then there was a similar moment when he played a 1-2 with Ogbene instead of turning, when there was space in behind. And the ball back out to Ogbene, I mean, he was just crossing very near the end line, and it was clearly, had he turned, there was an opportunity, but there's no awareness of that in the team. And they're kind of stuck in these rigid patterns when they go forward. It's very slow, it's quite predictable, and it's easy to defend against. And yeah, and then we're caught on the counter at the end, and we see other teams. I mean, you were talking about how encouraging the first half was, and it was, but then there's a kind of ruthlessness to other teams and an efficiency that is just sorely lacking at our end. And Greece were able to capitalise on errors on our side.
Yeah, and Johnny, did you like what you saw in the first half in terms of the structure on and off the ball, in terms of how they kind of set it up? Because it seemed like it was almost like a box of a press with Smallbone right up beside Smodix, and then behind them two of the midfielders sort of high in support, and then you have the other kind of box sitting in front of the defence. And they seemed to, weirdly enough, they were playing football in a sense when, coming into this window there was an expectation of it being a little bit more direct, although that might be a product of Sammy Smodix leading the line and not being a massively physical presence.
I agree with Conor. There was a fair bit of pressing done, but the detail of the pressing was really, really important. When we pressed with the two, if you watch the game again, Greece mostly started their attacks out to the right full rota. He didn't start too high up the pitch. The distances between the back four, Tsimikas was nearly in the Ireland half on the other side of the pitch, and there was big spaces between them. When we pressed with the two, they seemed to be able to get back out across the pitch. And that's what they wanted to do, because there was times when Ogbene and Obama were in the indecision between who'd go and who wouldn't go, and they wanted to play down that side. And when they did engage, one of the midfielders then ran into space in behind. They got in behind us in the first half 5 or 6 times down the left-hand side with Tsimikas. They got good opportunity. We did sort it out, as the manager said. They did get sorted out. But to answer your question, we were better when we pressed with the three. Raf, what you're saying was Smallbone and Smodic, and it was either Knight or Ogbene. But when we pressed with the three, you see early on in the game, we pinned them right back. So that's the first part of the plan. So we pinned them right back and we win it back. So what do we do then after we win it back? So again, it's going to take him time. He's trying to get them structures in place. But I think pressing with the three was better than pressing with the two. Yet we did play obviously a lot better than we did against England, because we didn't have the ball against England. Again, I was taking notes, regained possession, kept the 1, 2, 3, 4 passes in England, were retaining, or we kick it back to them. But, against Greece, obviously maintained it. I think the game was 50-50 in regards to possession. You know, they took charge at some stage, we took charge at other stages, but there was a good opportunity on the pressing side. Yeah, and I think the plan was there. We also had a plan of the big direct switch, the big diagonal ball, because they played quite high and quite narrow sometimes, and they've done the same against Finland. And Malumbi played some couple of lovely balls out to Albeni on the right-hand side, and we nearly got them down the right-hand side. So there was a plan to that. You could see the structure and the plan to that. But with the pressing, it was when we won it back. The distance between the two centre-halves were huge, and we could have got in there. So look, it's something to build on, and I agree the pressing was good, but it's the next part of that. It's the drilling down into what happens next, who presses, when do we press, and who supports, and when do we attack, and who sits, and how do we stop their counter-attack.
Yeah, I think the possession stat was 52-48 in Greece's favour. So yeah, pretty much more or less. Yeah, very, very close. And you mentioned
both teams, Rob, had times in the game where they looked as if they were in control. You know, so there was nothing between both the teams, except with the quality of the finishingness. You know, in Ioannidis, with the goals he got, and even the other night against Finland. You know, as a defender, you know, I would have been saying, you need to keep an eye on this fella. He's lethal. He only needs one opportunity, as Conor said. There's the difference up that end of the pitch, and we just didn't have that. And just on that, I just thought, sorry, I might be just going off a bit. I just thought Troy Parratt's been playing the regular. I thought Troy should have got a bit of a go. But Evan Ferguson looked a bit. He didn't look fit. He looked a bit puffy to me. He didn't look he was fit. He wouldn't be running around the way Smodic was. It's just something that came into my head there. Raf, I didn't mean to ramble off there, but look.
Yeah, you'd mentioned Nathan Collins earlier in terms of what he spoke about in terms of the 2 goals conceded. So let's just listen to him, because he was also speaking to Tony O'Donoghue about that.
I think I'd need to see it again, but I think we just lost our shape a little bit. Listen, it's a good finish, but I think there's a lot of things we could have changed. You know, I thought we'd come out second half kind of sharp as well. We were on top, and I think that took a lot out of us, unfortunately. Yeah, and then the confidence drops, and it's so difficult to regain that confidence then, isn't it? Yeah, of course, you know, and against a team like Greece who are 1-0 up, they're gonna defend with their lives again, but yeah, it's just real frustration. Going for the equaliser then, just a few minutes to go, and then the concession of that second goal. I mean, none of you will want to enjoy looking at that back, I'm sure. No, but listen, that's football, you know. Counter-attacks happen, but we were on top. We need to, when we're going forward there, we need to find an equaliser. We're at home, we need to chase it, we need to get back into the game. Counter-attacks happen, there's things we could have stopped again, but it's more the first goal we're really frustrated about.
Right, so that is Nathan Collins there, and that is in regards to Ioannidis' long-range goal, and then also the Solis's second one, the counter-attack. Now, just on the long-range goal first, I'm just going to pull up so this is for anybody watching on YouTube, you'll be able to see this. It's just a screen grab at the positioning for that long-range goal first. And, you know, Johnny, you were talking about, I suppose, it's a great finish by Ioannidis. He still has a lot to do, but as you can see it there, it's this player here, the Greek player basically just has one ball inside to Ioannidis, and he can cut out the entire midfield. As you can see in the structure, the back 4 are sort of all together, and then you have the 4 midfielders, Barog, Bene, all clustered together. What's the structural issue and problem behind that?
Well, if you walk from the back where Bene and Obamedeli actually is telling Albeni, you don't worry about him, I'll deal with him, and you worry about the fella in behind me. So that's the first bit of that. That's down on the left-hand picture. The 2 centre-halves, the player is in between them and out in front of them. Okay, so if one of them, the ball comes in on the right-hand side, and I think that's Knight who's down the line of the ball, because the ball doesn't come centrally, it comes in from the right-hand side. And if you see Ioannidis' his position there, where he is, he actually does brilliantly, because the midfielder, in fairness, is doing a good job, because initially he would have been stopping and going into his feet in front of the 2 centre-halves. So Ioannidis comes out, but then he comes out again. When you let that roll on again, his position there is right behind. I think it's Knight on the right-hand side. He actually steps out again, so it means he's down. He's not down. The player is not down the line. See, he comes deeper again where the ball has come to his feet. He had actually started to the left of that. He comes out again, so he takes the midfielder out of play. His first touch takes him into the direction he wants to go. Our 2 centre-halves are too far off. Their first option that they took was to step back. This option was to touch it in front of him, set himself up. Second touch was a finish. So I think his movement, you've got to give him the credit for his movement. But one of the centre halves, initially Collins had him engaged and he went across, but he didn't go all the way. So he was in between the two centre halves. But one of them should have engaged. Absolutely, one of them should have engaged. But I thought the centre forward done brilliantly because he got out in front of the midfielder as well, so the ball could get to him. So his first touch took him back into where he came out. Second touch set him up, and his third touch finished. But they should have engaged him. Absolutely should have engaged him. I thought his movement was brilliant, and I keep saying it because I rewound it and I said his initial starting position, he did move. He came out again. So he three movements. He'd one across Collins. The second movement was to the right, and his third movement was to the right of the midfielder, so he could get the ball into his feet.
Yeah,
but they still should have engaged him.
Yeah, do you feel also maybe there was a danger that the midfield, like the entire midfield, Barrow Bene there, got very attracted to the ball, and maybe Malumbi should have been covering that space a little bit because he's the closest to Ioannidis?
What happens is when it's that high up the pitch, fellas get attracted to the ball. And sometimes if you're close enough to win the ball, that's fine. But if you're not close enough to win the ball, that's somebody else's job. You need to pass that on. And that comes down to communication. That comes down to talking to the player. Stay there, don't move, stay down the line of the ball. Sometimes you need a player to mark space and also to mark that player so the ball is not coming into the centre forward's feet or it's not coming down through channels. And then you can get to the ball as the ball is being played. I don't know whether I'm explaining that properly, but that's the terminology of it. Marking space and marking the player, that you're doing two jobs. So I still think you can't say, well, the first point of defence was missed. The second point of defence shouldn't have been missed.
Yeah.
And it should have been a step forward instead of a step back. They should have closed the ball down and just narrowed in a little bit. Brilliant finish, I have to say. Brilliant finish. I'm listening to Nathan and I've said it. Counter-attacks happen, he said. That's the exact words he said. Counter-attacks happen. But you've got to be ready for the counter-attacks for the other goal as well. So he's only a young lad, he's learning, but he's playing at a really, really high level. The same against England, they didn't go in after Harry Kane. They didn't go in after Grealish. There's only 10v10 on the pitch, outfield players, 11v11, including the keepers. So the communication is vital from the players. And again, the manager spoke about that. That will come. But them players have been playing a bit together. They play at a high level. They should identify situations on the pitch where there's danger. And the danger is usually the last third of the pitch.
Yeah, and speaking of the manager speaking or not speaking, of course, Conor, in the build-up to this second game, there was a lot of focus, and I think there was a little bit of it also because we spoke about it with Keith Tracy last week before the England game as well, and just in terms of the manager's role and the dynamic with John O'Shea. Now, John O'Shea took the press conference on Monday, which usually the manager would take. Now, is it, I don't know, we both work in the media, so maybe it's a very media-centric story and something maybe we would focus on more than, say, a lot of supporters who may feel that it's not necessarily that important who sits in on a press conference and talks to the media. But there was that little thing of, unlike in the Steve Staunton era where he was talking about, I'm the gaffer, in this case, John O'Shea was saying, I'm not the gaffer. So there's a little bit of a harbinger back to that. But there was also the thing of like Roy Keane took a lot of pressers during Martin O'Neill's time. Like, what did you make of that, I suppose, as someone who works in the media, Conor, in terms of how that narrative built up in the media beforehand?
A very unwelcome callback to the Steve Staunton era. Yeah, no, my impression was it probably was a bit of a media fixation. I mean, it's partly in response to the performance against England and kind of everything is magnified and hopped on in that light. But my impression was that Hallgrimsson took heavy criticism after the England game, or at least his kind of the sort of standoffish nature of his role, or what people perceived as that, was heavily analysed and pored over and raked over, particularly the set piece where Paddy McCarthy seemed to be giving the pep talk and Hallgrimsson was a bystander, really. So that got fixated on it. My impression from the feedback was that a lot of supporters or readers or fans were inclined to give him a break, given that it was his first game and a terrible first game really to get landed with, and how much can he really affect in that time frame. Now others would have said he had a couple of months since he was appointed, but I don't know how often would international players be meeting him. It can't be that often. So Other Ireland managers have had longer lead-in times. I mean, ideally, and obviously it should have been the case that he had the few friendlies earlier in the year. I mean, that presumably would be what friendlies were organised for in the early part of 2024 to give the new manager a lead-in time. I mean, that's what they should have been used for, but he didn't have that, so we're essentially starting again. We've seen it with other Ireland managers. I mean, back in the day, Mick McCarthy lost seven of his first 8 games, I think, as Ireland manager, all of them friendly. So it wasn't particularly damaging in that respect. And by the time the tournament starts, I believe it was the RTÉ qualifiers, he gets a run, and Ireland are able to they're in the groove to a certain extent. Whereas this was totally absent here. He was dropped into an impossible situation from the start, and the England game. There seemed to be I wonder, was there a conscious effort to write it off nearly, given that there was, from his perspective, given that he would have probably deduced that there was little chance of getting a result out of the game. And so maybe there was part of the optics to distance himself from it, to give himself a bit of leeway. And the Greece game might have been the first one, as the first realistic chance to showcase an improvement, which in parts there was. So that could have been part of it. We're hoping. I thought his communication after the game was pretty good. I mean, he communicates very well in English, and his stuff about confidence and the hesitancy of the players, I thought, rang true. So in that respect, I think he is probably, if he's diagnosed the problems, which are abundant, if he's diagnosed them well, then he can start to deal with them. So I'm interested to see whether there will be further improvement in the next window, albeit, I mean, we're going to be scrapping with Finland, who Johnny watched them play Greece and they lost 3-0, so they can't be too hot. So, but we'd be scrapping with them to avoid the 4th place, even though there is a school of thought that maybe League C is where we should be headed at this stage.
Yeah, that's a great selling point for October now. But Johnny, just in terms of the that communication side of it, your own experience as a manager and assistant, and particularly match day -1, does it matter to you that Heimir Hallgrimsson wasn't taking the press conference on the Monday before this the Greece game?
From as you said earlier, the question, Conor, that's your end of the business. From my end of the business, I don't. Maybe from the leadership side of it, you'd say, yeah, like he's in front, he's out front house, or whatever you want to call it. Probably just focused on what he was trying to do, watching matches, watching players. Yeah, I think I agree with Conor. I like his attitude. I like the way he talks. I like the way he communicates. He's nice and calm, and I'm sure he's clear. And as I said, concise about what he does. He's nice and relaxed. He deals with the media really well. That could have been a tricky one last night to deal with. And I think he's very open and he's very honest. And sometimes when you're honest, it ends a question. Sometimes, people just want to keep going with a question. And sometimes you just, like what I've seen him, he's nice and calm, nice and relaxed. And look, for him to come out, look, I don't know. I think it's part of your duties to come and do it. He's the manager. Maybe the FAI should have said, look, we need you to do it. And I think he could have done it. Maybe it was just one of them things, John, when you just deal with that, because I'm busy here. I need to
they did say it was prearranged.
It might have been as simple as that. It might have been simple as that.
Yeah, as they said, I think John Shade said it had been prearranged for quite some time, so it from their view wasn't a last-minute decision. The final point, I suppose, in terms of the Ireland senior team, and this is something that came up in the press conference last night, which Heimir Hallgrimsson did take part in, and he was speaking to my own colleague and myself and Conor's colleague, Ed Leahy, and also Ken Early from Second Captains. They were kind of asking questions in and around, the structure and the, trying to build a coherent core of players, Johnny, and if you were picking from what you've seen in those first 2 games, and even from Stephen Kenny's era, what's the spine of the team? Who are the maybe 6 or 7 that should be starting all the time in your view?
Well, you usually pick your squad and you pick 6 or 7 defenders, whatever, 6 or 7, 8 midfielders, 4 or 5, 6 forwards, or 3 goalkeepers. And I heard him saying that he'd like to get a bit of cohesion. He'd like to get a group together, that this is his group that he's going to play. He spoke about rotation, didn't he, Raf? that he said he didn't want to be rotating too many players. He wanted to get a bit of cohesion in. I mean, O'Shea and Collins, for me, are two top young players. I mean, they're on the up. I think, in fairness to Seamus Coleman, he got injured the other night. You've probably seen Seamus better days, and he's been a fantastic servant. He probably struggle on the left-hand side. We might need something in on the left-hand side where Liam Scales can play in a 3 or 4. I like the madness of Malumbi in midfield, right? But he needs to be in there with someone with a bit of calmness, and someone to, like, he made a mistake last night at one stage and he went off chasing the ball and he lost the shape. So we need someone with a bit of experience in there. Whether Smallbone is ready for that at the moment, Alan Brown might be a fella that could bridge that gap until they get somebody coming through in the central midfield. He's experienced. I like Jason Knight because when we're up against the top teams and we need to get possession back, Jason's a good player on it, and he can keep it and keep possession. Whether we just keep it for 5 or 6 or 10 passes just to calm the game down, back into the game. His options up front with Evan, Ida, Smodic. Robson can come in and play left. He can play anywhere, left, right, central. So Troy Parrott, I spoke about him earlier. So he's a fair few options to play with. As you say, the spine of the team. The goalkeeping thing is good there for them as well. So look, he just needs to find the right balance. And looking at games over the last few days, I just find the best teams play with 4 at the back. They just play with 4 at the back, and they can step a centre half in the midfield if they need to. They can drop one of the 2 up front, back in the midfield. They can do 4-4-1-4-1 or 4-4-2 or 4-3-3. Most of the teams, in whatever shape they play, I think the best teams are structured to play 4 at the back. With 2 centre halves who don't care whether they're on 2v2 or 1v1, and a holding midfielder that can pick up the second phase of attack and set up the next phase, or protect the back 2 or protect the back 4. So I just feel that for me, shape and structure. For me, I feel the forward is especially for a team like us. And we keep talking about this word confidence. Everyone's mentioning it here now. Us here, the manager's saying it. Nathan Collins mentioned a bit of confidence. So to be structured and have the forward at the back to be harder to beat, it just gives you that bit of confidence. It's going to take a little bit of time, and we can build from there. So I hope that answers the question as best I could for you.
So you'd be dumping the back 5 into the dustbin of history forever if it was.
You just get pinned back. You just get pinned back because your 2 wing backs then are back, and you're in a 5. And then when you win it back, your holding midfielders are back in front of you, and then you might have one up front, and then the distances sometimes are too big when you get ball up to the front player to get to them. So I find with the forward, it's a bit easier. Your midfield, the people in front of you then, you might have a plan that if we win it down the left, well, then used to go and support the front player. So you have a bit more time. It's quicker to get up to the front player, maybe get the ball up and hold it there and build your attacks from there. I find it a bit easier when your wing backs are pinned back. They're up and down all day. They eventually just run out of steam, and we don't. I find when they're back there, we just don't ask. Like even in the England game, Conor Gallagher was a great player. When we asked them the questions a couple of times, and we got down the right hand side, I think it was on Benny got down the right hand side, and it was a Doherty that got a bit of support to him. Conor Gallagher was late getting back into the game, but they had enough players. They were set up in a way that they could defend. But we asked them a couple of small questions. You need to ask the opposition questions. I mean, you're 70 yards away from goal. You don't do that.
Just a left field gambit here. I just thrown it out there, and this may be harking back to the way Paul. We shouldn't be harking back to Italian 90 or whatever, but the way Paul McGrath was used. I mean, this might be left fielder a bit off the wall or flawed, but I just wonder what Johnny thinks. Would Nathan Collins be fit for that anchoring midfield role potentially? Given we have so many options at centre back, would he be suited there? Because he does seem very posed on the ball and elegant in possession. And
it depends what you want him to do. So if you need somebody in there, John Stones does it sometimes for Man City, doesn't he?
Yeah.
He goes from centre half in the midfield and he can play that role, what you're talking about, Conor. And it can be very effective because it helps the overload the midfield for them as well. Or, if he's going to play there as a holding midfielder and then you're pushing your other 2. If you're playing a 4-3-3 with one holding for you and the other 2 the 2 out of 3 midfield supporting the attack. So if that's his job, he doesn't get forward. There's no rotation. There's no one. He's not going into the attack. He just sits there. And look at Conor. It's an option. He definitely, he can defend. He can get on the ball. He can pass. His range of passing can be decent enough, and that allows the other 2 midfielders to maybe go and support a 1.5, one further up the pitch, and one just. So you've 3 kind of going forward. It's options, but again, I get back to what I said earlier. That's on the training pitch, Conor. That's where you need to go. You can go in there and do that. Sometimes you'll say, Nathan, in you go. But he has to be confident to do that. If it's a plan, your plan, and the player is not 100% competent to do it, you've got to find the right player and the right balance to do that. But it's options, and you've got to try them.
Yeah, but anyway, the senior team won't be reconvening again until October, so we'll try and get our confidence levels back before that. For the under-21s, though, they got a really great result over in Turkey in their European Championship qualifier. Sam Curtis running onto a Joe Hodge pass like prime Cafu almost, and finishing it off for a 1-0 win. But then yesterday evening, just before the Ireland senior game in Tallaght, Ireland drew 2-2 with Latvia, disappointing result, and there are 2 games remaining now. So they play Norway and Cork next month, and then they play Italy away in Trieste as well. And and Johnny, I mean, looking at the group situation, it really does feel, the Turkey result was great, but that Latvia game, it just feels like that is going to be the costly one in terms of any hope of getting the automatic qualification spot.
Well, we've got the game in hand on Italy, so we're 4 points off them. So I think you need to win the group, don't you? You need to be up there. Goal difference is very similar with Norway. Norway are 2 points behind us with 8 games played as well. I think we've only +1 on them. So the 2 games are obviously vital. I mean, looking at can we go and win the 2 games? I would say, yeah. I would say absolutely. To go behind the Latvia game is the 2 points drop. I'd say Jim will probably say yes. At least he got something out of the game. It keeps them in it. But if they got the win, it'll put them right up there with Italy and put the pressure on Italy. Look, Jim has done a brilliant job here. I've a bee in my bonnet about this 21s for Jim. And in the last campaign, it wasn't against Israel. We didn't get the players that we should have got. We should have got Troy Parrott. Jim should have been given all the players that were eligible to play in that 21s, and we would have beat Israel, and we would have qualified for that 21s, that last 21s. Am I right, Raf, to say that? It was the playoff against Israel. The Israelis brought their players back from the senior team to play against us.
Yeah, including Abada. I think Abada from Celtic, was brought back to play for them in that game. Yeah. And
I think back to that, and to qualify for them tournaments at under 21 level is huge. And I just think Jim got knocked back there. I think he should have been given the players. This is my personal opinion. He should have been given the players at the time, and we qualified. It could have been nothing but positive for the FAI at the time and for qualifications. But to get them back to where they are now, I think Jim has done a fantastic job, and I really hope he gets it over the line. He's got some really good young players coming through. And again, players that are coming through, the senior manager needs to talk to the under-21 manager about players coming out with the 21s and 20. Not just about their ability, about their character, about how they are under pressure. And I know there's a step from the 21s into the senior team, but that cohesion needs to happen as well. But Jim, for me, he's done a great job, and I hope he really gets them over the line.
Yeah, so those next set of
the Norway game. I mean, I think if they can nail down a playoff spot, they should have a crack. They really should have beaten. As Johnny says, they really should have beaten Israel that time. I mean, even with the players they had, they should have won at home.
But Conor, it should have been nailed on. We should have left no room for error. We should have been given the players to get them through. And that hopefully won't happen again if they do get to a playoff. And you're right, Conor. Maybe they should have beaten Israel, but look, load it up. Make sure we get through. The trick was to get through to the finals there.
Yeah. Now, in the Women's Champions League, Peamount United were in action last week in the qualifiers, and this was in the first kind of sort of group situation for it. And they faced Belarus's Dinamo BGU FK in the round one semi-final on the Champions Path in Croatia. That was last Wednesday, and they got a really creditable result with Kerry Lettman scoring an extra time winner for Peamount in what was also 26 degrees heat, so having to deal with the conditions on top of it as well. Unfortunately, their journey ended on Saturday against Osijek of Croatia, and that was despite taking the lead through Leitrim native Dervla Byrne, and they ended up losing 2-1. Leitrim. I had to get that in. I'll be asking you a Longford related question and later on. Like, you know, I'm quite generous on that front. But either way, also on the Wednesday of last week, Ireland international Saoirse Noonan also scored a hat-trick for Celtic in their opening qualifier against Finland's KUPS. That was again last Wednesday. And then domestically, in terms of the results on Saturday, Wexford and Galway drew 1-1. Athlone beat Cork City 4-0. Sligo Rovers lost 4-0 at home to DLR Waves. Shamrock Rovers are starting to get themselves back into form, and it was a big derby win, beating Bowes 5-1. And then Shelbourne came out on top against Treaty United 4-2. Kate Mooney scoring a first half brace for Shells there. What it does to the table is Athlone are still top, 2 points clear of Shells, and Athlone have a game in hand as well. Galway are also closing in, and they are 3 points behind Shells with a game in hand and 5 points off the top as well there. Now, in the League of Ireland, Shamrock Rovers versus Sligo Rovers will be live on RTÉ2 and the RTÉ Player this Friday at 7:30, and it's the first of a slate of live league and cup fixtures on RTÉ over the coming weeks. Derry City against Shamrock Rovers next Friday on the 20th of September will also be one of our live games. But we're going to talk about the Dundalk situation before we chat about any FAI Cup action as well, where we will have a live game. And Dundalk manager John Daly on Friday of last week said the players and staff had not been paid that week. It came amid reports that owner Brian Ainscough was considering his future just 9 months since his takeover. The club has outstanding debts of over €1 million. Now, Daly, whose family live in Scotland, said, "We spoke to the owner and he has told us that we will be paid a little bit late. So we just need to take his word for it and hope that it follows through. This is new to me in terms of how to deal with this. And it becomes difficult when you're living away from your family as well and you're on your own." And Brian Ainscough then on Monday, so just a couple of days ago, elaborated on the situation and admitted the difficulties that the club are and will face at the moment. So in his statement, he said, "There are a lot of reports out there that the club is experiencing financial difficulties. Unfortunately, those reports are true. I was hoping to secure investment in August, but for various reasons that did not come true. I'm working hard to keep it going, but my immediate concern now is that the club can carry on for the remainder of the season. I'm actively seeking investment and I'm exploring all possibilities about the ownership of the club to ensure that happens. I will continue to speak to any interested parties and I remain fully positive that we can secure the injection of cash that we need to keep us going. Regarding wages, I can confirm that there was a delay in paying the wages last week. I'm aware of the distress that this has caused our players and staff, and I would like to assure them that this was a temporary issue which will be resolved in the coming days. I want to thank our players, staff, supporters, and the wider community for their support and patience at this time, and want to let them know that we are working extremely hard to turn this situation around." And then on top of that, a supporters group at Dundalk has launched a GoFundMe to help the club and try and pay wages in the interim. And Johnny, I suppose the human toll of that, I mean, it harks back to some of the dark times the league has faced, where clubs either came very close to going to the wall or actually went out of business. But the human toll on the players and the staff dealing with issues in and around salaries, just how difficult can that be, especially when they're fighting relegation at the same time on the pitch?
Well, look, as you said, Raf, like, I mean, this is 20 years ago stuff. I mean, how is this allowed to happen? You know, how is this allowed to happen by the league? You know, if someone comes in to take over a club, you know, the investment should be there. They should say, have you enough money to look after this for the season? I mean, I don't know how this is after happening. I mean, when I hear things like trying to secure investment and an investment of cash, that doesn't sound good, Raf. Like, I mean, you know, and down to the players, like, we're trying to get a league going now that's, you know, professional league. It's a proper league, you know, the structures are proper behind it. That, you know, this just smacks of, and it'll just be for people to go, "Oh, here we go again, the League of Ireland." 5 or 6 years ago, or 7 years ago, when Stephen Kenny was doing great, whatever it was with Dundalk, they were taking in millions. Like, how did this happen? Like, how does it go to, we've no wages for the staff? Like, this is wrong. This is completely wrong. This shouldn't be allowed to happen in this day and age. I mean, it shouldn't. We need to run this industry as a proper industry, and it's been done really well, up to now. I mean, now we've got, Steve McGuinness with the PFAI, the union coming in and all that, and all this stuff comes in. But people have to be paid, Raf. It's a job. It's like we're trying to build this industry up where, the next step is where players are paying into pension funds and all this, the way it is in England. It needs to be a proper industry. And this just knocks it back.
Yeah, and Graham Gartland, he was part of our coverage for the Ireland Under-21s game, and he was speaking to Marie Crowe about this before the game kicked off. And this is just a clip of him discussing the structural issues within the league, and also at a time when also salaries are and spend on wages is going up.
There's no revenue sources other than the fans coming in the door, and that's where I think the league needs to really have a look at itself and go, yeah, we are getting better crowds in, and it's brilliant, and we all love it, and it's growing. But it's just on the edge of it, where I always felt this season with the wages that were being put out, and I'm not begrudging any player any wages. I never have. That's their entitlement to get it. But it was starting to creep back into the old days where you thought, oh, there's a worry here if this doesn't work.
So that is Graham Gartland, of course, a regular guest on this podcast as well, discussing an aspect of the situation at Dundalk. But it does sort of lead you back to the structural issues within the league, particularly, as he pointed out there, the one revenue source that clubs tend to have are the gates. But if the stadia are not necessarily fit for purpose, and I think there's always been a focus on Oriel Park in that sense as well, you're not going to be able to mine the full potential of the fan base that is there.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of. I mean, I suppose it's particularly surreal given where Dundalk came from in the middle of the last decade and how much, European success is touted as a panacea often in the league here, and no one had a more lucrative run in Europe than Dundalk. I mean, they even managed to win a game and accumulate points in the group stages of the Europa League proper, not even the Conference League. So to see them plummet in the year since is it's very disheartening. I know there has been a lot of talk about the stadium. I know there might have been some development there. I'm not there often, but it obviously looks like one of the most. There was always some incongruity there that they were the strongest team in the 2010s and they had the most ramshackle stadium in the league, possibly, or close to it. But that would probably take a lot of finance. There seems to have been a lot of chaos in terms of the background, in terms of the ownership. I know they had American ownership for a while, and now Ainscough has come in. A lot of back and forth there, and whatever happened. I mean, as Johnny said, I mean, there should have been some due diligence done on how much investment could be secured, and they've obviously got in over their heads. I know Graham Gartland was also talking about the amount of wages that players are taking in now, and it was kind of leaning back towards that mid-noughties era when famously Shelbourne shelled out a lot on wages and then got into terrible trouble even after their own European success. So there are some parallels there, but as regards this season, I mean, it's a terrible situation. I mean, you would have to say now they're probably favourites to go down in light of this going on in the background. I mean, I know at the start of the season there was a perception that they were possibly going to dig themselves out, or the team on paper was too good and they would nose ahead of Drogheda or whoever. But with all this going on in the background, it's very hard to see how they can keep their head above water. I know Shells won the league back in 2006 when they hadn't been paid for a couple of months. Johnny might remember that, but they only crawled over the line, I think, having been well ahead. So it's a very difficult thing to cope with.
It might be similar this year. I think Shells might just crawl off the line as well this year.
Yeah. But also the journalist James Rogers, who covers Dundalk particularly, he was on Modern Ireland yesterday as well, and he was discussing the potential buyers that are there and what will happen if the investment that they're looking for doesn't come true between now and the end of the season.
I think the major concern now is probably, there can be maybe post-mortems of how we got here later, but just can resolutions be found to sort those people out as best as possible?
Any interested buyers?
There has been talks with round about 8 to 10 different parties, a lot of them sort of just explorative. Obviously, when your debts are that great, it's probably doesn't make a lot of financial sense from a business perspective to go in there. You're really looking for maybe a white knight, and if that doesn't emerge, you're probably looking at the more realistic scenario of possible examinership, which look isn't ideal for anyone. It affects obviously the existing staff there. It affects potentially, so a lot of the creditors who are owed money, because they'll be burnt on it, and it's not an ideal scenario at all.
All right, so that is James Rogers there. Obviously, I think everyone feels for the players and staff at Dundalk.
Yeah, I do find it hard to believe. Maybe this is naivety or optimism. I mean, I do find it hard to believe Dundalk could go out of business, given the nature of Dundalk as a football town. I mean, it seems inconceivable. But then maybe that's too up. Maybe in the late 60s, people said the same about Drumcondra. I don't know. I mean, but yeah, it's seems impossible.
Yeah, we'll see how that transpires. Of course, they're going to be in league action this Friday. They're playing Waterford away from home. Shamrock Rovers, as we said, live on RT2 and the RT Player, hosting Sligo Rovers at Tallaght Stadium. And then Shamrock Rovers are in action again on Monday when they play Galway United at Eamon DC Park. But there's a full round of quarter-final action in the FAI Cup as well. We're going to have Derry City against Shelbourne live on RT2 and the RT Player on Saturday. The kickoff is at 5:45, on Saturday. And the first quarterfinals are on Friday, and that's UCD against Bows, Athlone against Drogheda United, Wexford against Treaty United, and then of course the big game, Johnny. I mean, Derry Shells is probably the one where I suppose the favourites for the competition are probably going to come out of that game, but there's a huge opportunity there for the likes of Bows and Drogheda, and even for a giant killer of sorts from the first division from the clubs remaining.
It's just answer your question in a minute. Wexford and Treaty, isn't it? That's the last game, yeah. Wexford and Treaty. Yeah, well, that's for one of them to get through into the semi-finals going to be huge for them. It looks like Shells and Derry seem to be playing one another every 3 or 4 weeks now. But it'll be a tight game. The games have been been very tight between them. There've been a couple of players sent off for matches as well. Bowls have a great opportunity to get to a semi-final, and Athlone came through. They had a good win as well. So look, the cup takes a bit of pressure off teams, and it opens doors for other teams as well. I think Derry Shells will be so focused on just stumbling over the line over the next few weeks to win the league. So maybe Derry might just have the advantage psychologically on that one, but Shells are hard to beat. Damien goes out to try and win every game. Whether people think it's nice or not sexy or whatever you want to call it, but they're there every week. You give 100%. But good opportunity for both of them. Whoever gets through to go on, maybe win a double this year. So it could be an opportunity for a double to be won this year with Derry and Shells.
Yeah, so a lot of play for both of those clubs, of course, as well. So live on RT2 and the RT Player on Saturday evening. And Cork City promoted after a 1-0 win over UCD, courtesy of Malik Dykesteel last Friday. But Johnny, in terms of their hopes of this time not yo-yoing when it comes to next season, how well are they set up in terms of the longer term, in terms of the squad that they have, and obviously they have Tim Clancy in charge and the potential to build on what they've done this season?
Well, Tim has been there before, so he knows the league. It's not like you take the manager into the Premier League. He know what's required in the league. He knows the standard of players that he has in the first division, that who will be able to make the step up. So it's good for them that they have the opportunity now to have time to go and seek players and go and scout players. And I think Cork City are in a good place at the moment. Compare that to where Dundalk are, and I think that the league need Cork City back in, fans wise and stuff like that. But Tim will have a bit of work to do. There might be a few players floating around who coming out with teams that have big squads. But he need to do Galway or he need to do Waterford, where they get off to a good start, in next season, and make sure they maintain their position in the league and try and build on that over the next year or two. So I think Tim's experience of being in the league, from previous, will definitely stand to him and to Cork City.
Yeah, and Cork City play now. Of course, whatever happens now, they're promoted and won the first division. Yeah, but they they play Bray next, and Lorcan Fitzgerald has stepped back from first team coaching duties at Bray Wanderers due to work and family commitments. With 6 games to go, though, they are in the final playoff spot, 4 points clear of Finn Harps. What do you make of the situation at Bray, Johnny? And then in terms of the playoff race now, and obviously UCD are second, and I think, as Conor has often said, it's probably easier to get promoted, or easier to make the playoffs than anything else in this division. But what you make of how things are balanced in that division at the moment?
Look, I agree with Conor. Like you can be just knocking around, and then you come on a bit of a run at the end of the season and get you into the playoffs. I think Wexford might be up there. Athlone will be in and around the playoffs. It's difficult. I mean, I remember being with Shells, and Longford won the first division. I was at Shells, and we were like 16, 17 points clear of Galway, and they beat us in the playoffs. So, and then Galway went up, and with Tommy Dunn's team. But it's teams that go up. Are you ready? We're talking about Cork. You need to be ready to go up. UCD won't be ready to go up because they're used to it. They know what's required. They know the structures. They know the finances of it. They know how to do it. The likes of Wexford going up, and Athlone or someone going up like that out of a playoff. I think the team in the Premier League is always just that little bit too far ahead to play the team in that game, in the playoff game. So Cork coming up, UCD might have a chance of coming up in the playoffs.
Yeah, and obviously in that division, Conor, just to finish off, I suppose Longford Town, bottom, but just 2 points behind Kerry. Now, you did tell me in the office on last Friday that it's not a historically bad season for Longford, despite how bad things have been this season. But there is hope.
Only Anna would be able to tell you that. Yeah, the 97-98 season was worse. They won 2 matches, both away from home, as I can tell you as someone who was at almost every home game that year. Both of them were away from home. But yeah, they're good 1-0 win over Bray last week. And following up, they needed, it took a Sean Maguire injury time goal for Cork to beat them the previous week. So, who knows? I mean, Kerry have to watch their back in the coveted ninth position there in the first division, really, don't they?
Yeah, well, I suppose there is something to fight for there in the 6 remaining games for them. But anyway, that is it for this week. The podcast will be back on Monday, when there will be reaction to the weekend's domestic action, and also what happens in the Premier League, and also this new look Champions League with the sort of convoluted format. It'll be kicking off very soon as well. We're going to have live coverage on Wednesdays of those games as well. So Johnny McDonnell, thanks very much for coming on this week, and Conor Neville as well.
Cheers, Raf. Cheers, Conor. Thank you.